our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest of the world. Its labor supplies the products which constitutes by far the largest, most important portions of commerce of the earth. These products are peculiar to the climate, verging on the tropical regions, and by an imperious law of nature, none but the black race can bear exposure to the tropical sun. A blow has been long aimed at the institution of slavery, and was at the point of reaching its consummation. There was no choice left us but submission to the mandates of abolition of slavery, or a dissolution of the Union, whose principles had been subverted to work out our ruin, that we do not overstate the dangers to our institution of slavery. The hostility to this institution of slavery commenced before the adoption of the Constitution, and was manifested in the well-known Ordinance of 1787, in regard to the Northwestern Territory. The feeling increased, until, in 1819, it deprived the Southern states of more than half of the vast territory acquired from France. It has grown until it denies the right of property in slaves, and refuses protection to that right on the high seas, in the territories, and wherever the government of the United States had jurisdiction. It refuses the admission of new slave states into the Union, and seeks to extinguish slavery by confining it within its present limits, denying the power of expansion. It has nullified the fugitive slave law in almost every free state in the Union, and has utterly broken the compact which our fathers pledged their faith to maintain. It advocates Negro equality, socially and politically, and promotes insurrection and incendiarism in our midst.
Okay, I'm doing this video right after the South Carolina primary, Republican primary for president, and Ron Paul came in fourth with 13% of the vote. He was behind the Romney, Gingrich, and Santorum, and then Ron Paul is polling fourth place in Florida now at 8%, and he's not doing well against the Tea Party people or independents, etc. Now I've got all these Confederate flags here because Ron Paul spoke before an audience of what we call neo-Confederates who think that the Civil War. Oh, and this is Chuck Baldwin. I guess he ran as a Libertarian candidate, but apparently Chuck Baldwin is a neo-Confederate too. He keeps flying the Confederate flag and says the Civil War wasn't necessary or just. Okay, so you can find this neo-Confederate speech by Ron Paul. It's on YouTube. It's where he's standing in front of a Confederate flag. And then you can also hear him on mainstream media talking about, well, the Civil War really wasn't necessary. We could have, the Congress could have bought all the slaves in the South and then freed them, and there would be no war and no violence, and it would all be, oh boy, is that fantasy land? But that's the neo-Confederate or, revisionist history. Now, then also Paul is also associated not only with neo-Confederates and this speech before the neo-Confederates, but with the John Birch Society, which is a kind of wacko right-wing conspiratorial group. For those of you who don't know who the John Birch Society is, they were started in the 1950s as a kind of a strongly anti-communist, almost paranoid anti-communist group, conservatives, and even the conservatives in the Republican Party didn't like them, and they kicked them. Oh, they were also anti-Jewish as well. They didn't want fluoride to be added to water, to stop tooth decay. They thought vaccines were also part of, required vaccines like polio and measles and mumps, all the other regular vaccines that children get. That was part of this, communist conspiracy to take over the United States. That's the John Birch Society. Now, Ron Paul spoke before I think it was the 50th anniversary of the John Birch Society. So that tells you a little bit more about Ron Paul's kind of extremist conspiracy fear-mongering approach here this time. Now, this last part of the video here is going to be Ron Paul's newsletters, which went over a period of 10 years or 15 years, and it was titled the Ron Paul Report, and it was entitled the Investment Report, and now this one I got is the Freedom Report. The newsletter was also entitled at one point the Survival Report. So you get that fear-mongering, danger, conspiracy, strain in all those newsletters. Now, it's very confusing about all these newsletters, and it's very confusing as to who did Ron Paul write it, and Ron Paul hasn't really been very specific about it. But it includes a lot of stuff about African Americans, and of course, again, there's a lot of this fear-mongering, conspiracy, downfall stuff in it. It talks about African Americans, racial war. It talks about AIDS a lot. There's a lot of stuff about AIDS, stuff about homosexuality. One of the conspiracy theories they throw out in this newsletter is that the U.S. government, invented or devised the AIDS virus. We now know that the AIDS virus originated in Africa. It was prevalent in Africa. So let me wrap this video up. You can find Ron Paul's speech before the Neo-Confederate group on YouTube. You can find the quotes from, I'll put them in the information box, the quotes from the numerous newsletters that Ron Paul may or may not have written, or one of Ron Paul's friends may or may not have written, or whatever. They're all over the internet. And then you can check out the John Birch Society if you want, and you can see that Ron Paul spoke before them, and maybe there's even a transcript of his speech there. Yeah, it's all out there. But now the question is, where does Ron Paul go? Where does the Ron Paul cult group supporters go after they've gotten beaten roundly in the Republican Party? They go out and do another movement, an independent movement, whatever.